This is what I said to the last group who invited me to give the Sunday morning services. The fact that I have been invited to give a Sunday morning message, I'm pretty sure is one of those signs that the world as we know it is about to end. Which is not necessarily a bad thing. So to reiterate, I am not a theologian. Nothing I'm about to say has been lifted from the Bible or the Quran or any kind of religious document because I've never read them. I am simply a person that has an uncontrolled ability to connect to the divine realms and to see into the kind of cosmic picture, the things that are going on in our world. And since there's not an accreditation program for anything like that, you might say I have a different kind of online degree, and that's really the only authority that I have to stand up here and talk to you today. And I'm really just going to talk from my heart. With the help of my notes, because sometimes while my heart is talking, my mind goes on a road trip and I kind of get lost. So today I'm going to talk about prayer. In particular, I'm going to talk about the wide awake prayer that I have been watching rise up in our world. But to do that, I have to start way, way, way back. So long, long ago, we were taught, or we thought that we were supposed to follow the will of an entity that we called God, or gods, or goddesses, or whatever, it doesn't matter, as a higher power. And we believed that we were supposed to follow whatever this entity wanted us to do. And we had instructions that were transcribed or passed along by somebody that we thought was acting on the authority of that God. And so we went about our life following those instructions, doing as we thought we were supposed to do. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. And we began to expect this higher power to follow our will. And we gave that expectation a nice little word called prayer, from the Latin word precari, meaning to ask earnestly or to beg. So we began to bow our heads and fold our hands, close our eyes, and say things like, "Dear God, I really need you to do this or that or the other for me or for someone else or for the whole world." So now we have this hope or expectation that this divine power is going to follow our requests and our will. And as we did this, as prayer became part of our human life, serious prayers and prayer makers developed some tools to help us with this process. So things like mantras, things like prayer beads, the rosaries used in Catholic tradition, the malas used in Buddhist tradition. And these were to help us keep track of what we're saying and how many times we've said it. Now, a lot of people don't care for these tools, and they consider them something trivial. They consider them something that promotes rote memorization or reliance on something that's prescribed or material, rather than something that fosters full participation of the body and mind in prayer. But serious practitioners will tell you that when these tools are used with deep focus and reverence, they can help one get grounded in the purpose or the purity of intention that they want for a humble union with the entity to whom they're praying, or a greater concentration on the focus of the issue about which they're praying. So for some people, those tools are valuable. But the truth is, most of us who pray don't use these tools. Most of us grew up in an environment where prayer was more of a kind of a habit of routine, something we did before bedtime or before meals, or when we passionately want to help someone in need, or when the lottery's above $100 million and we passionately want to help ourselves. But what are we really doing when we pray? And who is listening to us? I used to consider prayer just kind of a focused conversation I was having with myself that I kind of hoped some invisible beings were listening in on. And for me, it was kind of like a PowerPoint presentation where I could get really organized and I could help these invisible beings get really clear on the things that were really important to me. And I'm sure we can all relate to the PowerPoint presentation prayer, where we start off really nice and we have a slide one that says gratitude. And here we have our bullet points where we line out all the things that we're grateful for, like our family and our friends, our food, our health, and our favorite catch-all, our blessings. And now that we've made nice, slide 2 says help. And here we line out our bullet points where we make the case for an invisible being to be assigned to us to help us with things like problems at home, or landing a new job, or curing an illness, or traveling safely, or achieving world peace. And then sometimes we have slide 3, which is, if you could work it in. And there's usually, that one big bullet point, like, don't forget, the lottery's above 100 million now. So in addition to that PowerPoint prayer, I also used to say that sweet little bedtime prayer. Here I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake. Right on. Now, when I would say that prayer, I would imagine holding the hand of Jesus and walking off into my sleep together. And in his other hand, he was holding my dog or holding the hand of my partner or something. And even though I wasn't Christian or religious in any way, shape, or form, I loved that prayer. It always felt comforting to me. I said it all through my childhood, all through my teens, into my 20s. But clearly, I never died in my sleep. And so he never had to take my soul to keep, and eventually I just quit saying the prayer. So now we fast forward to today, and I see prayer from the perspective of a mystic who didn't plan on being a mystic. And some of what I see is obvious to other people as well. The first of that being that we're in a world that's waking up, that we're waking up to greater spiritual truths than we have ever known before. En masse, this is happening. And as we do this, we're beginning to question what we've been taught. We're beginning to question, in particular, the religious rules and rituals. But we're doing this while we're grounded in our own good and loving spiritual intentions. In fact, we're questioning what we've been taught because we're getting more grounded in our own good and loving spirituality. So as we do this, it's not unthinkable that we might begin to question the power of prayer. Does it have any meaning? Is it really valuable? How does it work? Do I necessarily need to do it? And I think it's a wonderful subject to explore, because then I think that people might begin to remember or realize what I can see. And that is that prayer was actually born out of our desire, our deep desire, to return to, or return our awareness to, the state of oneness with God, with each other, and with the world around us. That the origin of our prayers, in our believed separation from God's love, was actually our desire to reunite. And this is why we began to pray. I read recently a blurb on the website of a friend of mine about a story called The Aleph, A-L-E-P-H. It's a short story by Argentinian author Jorge Luis Borges. And in this story, a man discovers that the center of the universe is located in his own basement. And this center point, or the Aleph point, is the point that contains all other points in the universe. And it gives the beholder access to the field of oneness consciousness. So you can imagine if there is this point where all other points are contained and interconnected in the subtle level of the field of oneness consciousness, that meetings in that point are direct. They're unmediated, inside to inside, self to self, self to all, and all to self. Well, it turns out we all have that center point in our own basement. And this is why and how prayer works. Because when we pray, we bow our heads and we subconsciously aim inward right into that center point that we all share. When we aim into that center point, this is where we all meet. In all our eternal forms, we meet in that center point. We understand each other and we help each other from right there. So what's happening now in our externally focused world, as we're waking up more and more to the realization that our being is not separate from other beings, is that we're beginning to focus more easily and readily into that center point. And this is happening in tiny little subtle ways that a lot of people aren't aware of. It's happening through a steady, subtle shift away from our long-held focus on things like expectations and roles, stress and strife, and in particular, a focus away from fear and judgment. And we're beginning to focus much more often on well-being and wonder, appreciation and hope and trust. In other words, we're focusing more on love. We're beginning to turn our attention, our thoughts and our mindless reactions, away from our long-held habitual perspectives and behaviors that were manufactured in the past, and we're becoming far more present. This is not news, I'm sure. And as we do this, we begin to access that center point without even using our words or closing our eyes. We simply go there with the direction of our thoughts and intentions. We're doing this because we're beginning to look around more gratefully. We're beginning to listen more discerningly. We're beginning to consider situations differently than we ever have before. And most importantly, we're beginning to think more deeply, more piercingly deep through our hearts. As we do this, as we awaken more and more to that, we begin to bring that center point closer to our everyday awareness. And we begin to make our everyday awareness closer to that center point. And this is how we're beginning to make our life a living prayer. This is the wide awake prayer. And this is what I'm watching, this wide awakeness is what I'm watching rise up all around the world. So does that mean then that the ritualized prayer or the PowerPoint prayer are no longer needed? On the contrary, those prayers are more powerful now than ever before, for 3 reasons. The first is that we're now going into prayer much more often with a far greater capacity for authenticity, with a focus on what's really important. We're much less likely to skim the surface now because we're much more focused and we're much more present in our prayers. We're also far less likely to go into a prayer from a place of fear, in particular, a fear of punishment, as in the sinner mentality, that we're going to be in trouble for doing things wrong or against God's law or whatever. We're not doing that so much anymore. We're also less likely to go into it from a place of fear as helplessness, as in the victim mentality. So now we're heading into prayer more often from a place of authentic gratitude, sincere gratitude, hope, trust, appreciation, and courage. There's this bubbling up more and more and more of courage within us that's coming through in our prayers, that's feeding that hope and that knowing that something new is coming, or something new is arriving, I should say. And 3, these prayers are so powerful now because we are no longer going into prayer with the deeply subconscious old question of who is reporting to whom. Because now we're meeting God more and more on equal terms as we continue to align our will more and more with the will of God. And what that ultimately means is that we're doing, and this actually relates to what you talked about in the self, we're actually just remembering more and more of our own goodness or our own godness. And that's what's happening through prayer. Now, these shifts are not obvious to everyone, but I can assure you, I've been watching them rise up all around the world. And what prayer comes down to in our awakening world is a greatly heightened level of desire for collective communication and communion. And now we're able to go there with the energy that we're giving the present moment, whether that present moment involves bullet points or beads or wonder and compassion so deep it rattles our bones. Because now the energy that we're giving that present moment is more and more a powerful vibration of love. And that is the center point that contains all other points. Love is where we meet in all our forms, all our eternal forms, both bodily and divine. Love is where we meet, we understand, and we help each other in the most magnificent ways imaginable for the benefit of all beings in the universe. And that is the hidden miracle in the power of prayer. It is never just for one of us. Love always benefits all beings. Love always benefits more than just ourselves. Nothing happens in a vacuum. So the ripple effects from and the interconnectedness of our prayers are unimaginably vast. No single prayer can be heard in the field of oneness consciousness with just one person in mind. It cannot be. So think about that. Think about how powerful each one of us is as we become more compassionate, more present, and more loving in our prayers and in our wide awakeness. And then see that power growing and expanding and growing and expanding all around the world. This is what I see. This is what's happening all around. So, my advice on this subject, for what it's worth, is to go ahead and pray. Whether that prayer is your head down and your eyes closed in sincere plea, or your head up and your eyes open in sincere wonder, go ahead and pray. And then, equally important, take the time to sit in stillness, to listen and allow. Because this is a two-way communication and communion. Actually, it's a multi-way communication and communion. And our power of participation in both the asking and the allowing has never been greater than today. There's a wonderful, magnificent momentum happening in our world, and you're part of it. Actually, you are that momentum. So by all means, incite as much love, joy, peace as you can through your prayers. So I'm going to wrap this up with a poem by Ellen Bass, and I think it's a particularly relevant poem for today's times when we're constantly inundated with all of these modern versions of the age-old story of injustice and unrest and violence and this sort of stuff. And Ellen reminds us to cast our attention gently on all that's underway in the present moment and infuse that moment with your deepest desire for a world at peace. So this is Pray for Peace by Ellen Bass. Pray to whomever you kneel down to. Jesus nailed to his wooden or plastic cross, his suffering face bent to kiss you. Buddha still under the Bodhi tree in scorching heat. Adonai, Allah, raise your arms to Mary that she may lay her palm on our brows. To Shekinah, queen of heaven and earth, to Inanna in her stripped descent. Then pray to the bus driver who takes you to work. On the bus, pray for everyone riding that bus. For everyone riding buses all over the world, drop some silver and pray. Waiting in line for the movies, for the ATM, for your latte and croissant, offer your plea. Make your eating and drinking a supplication. Make your slicing of carrots a holy act. Each translucent layer of the onion, a deeper prayer. To hawk or wolf or great whale, pray. Bow down to terriers and shepherds and Siamese cats, fields of artichokes and elegant strawberries. Make the brushing of your hair a prayer, each strand its own voice singing in the choir on your head. As you wash your face, the water slipping through your fingers, a prayer. Water, softest thing on earth, gentleness that wears away rock. If you're hungry, pray. If you're tired, pray to Gandhi or Dorothy Day, Shakespeare, Sappho, Sojourner Truth. When you walk to your car, to the mailbox, to the video store, let each step be a prayer that we all keep our legs, that we do not blow off anyone else's legs or crush their skulls. And if you're riding a bicycle or a skateboard or in a wheelchair, each revolution of the wheels, a prayer as the earth revolves, less harm, less harm, less harm. And as you work, typing with a new manicure, a tiny palm tree painted on one pearlescent nail, or delivering soda, or drawing good blood into rubber-capped vials, writing on a blackboard with yellow chalk, twirling pizzas. With each breath in, take in the faith of those who have believed when belief seemed foolish, but still persevered. With each breath out, cherish. Pull weeds for peace. Turn over in your sleep for peace. Feed the birds, each shiny seed that spills onto the earth, another second of peace. Wash your dishes, call your mother, drink your wine. Shovel leaves or snow or trash from your sidewalk. Make a path. Fold a photo of a dead child around your Visa card. Scoop your holy water from your gutter. Gnaw your crust. Mumble along like a crazy person, stumbling your prayer through the streets. And with that, I offer you my own prayer of peace and joy, and I thank you for having me here today. May our time together be of great benefit to all beings.